The Budapest defense for black, after white plays d4, black plays nf6, and white plays c4, rather than a Benoni type with this, gives up a pawn at e5. So the pawn is usually taking with this, at pawn takes pawn. Now the knight has two choices. Knight e4 is one idea, in which case knight d2 could be played, or in this game, knight to g4 is being played. Now white is looking at it, pawn on e5 can protect with bishop to f4, or it can just not ignore the pawn, let him have the pawn for black and play e3 to get his pieces out. Or he can just develop his knight on nc3 and try to control the center that way. Now if black does take that pawn, white can play knight f3, develop it pretty equal with that. But in this case, black plays d6. He wants to exchange and get the pieces out very quick and develop because he's a pawn behind. White can try to hold the pawn with f4. Black can continue with c6 and get the queen out. Or if we look at this position here, after white takes the pawn at d6, usually you'll have choices. The bishop comes out d6 ready to castle is the normal line. If white tries to take out with the queen, that comes out too early. White can exchange, kick back the knight, and is ahead in development. So with the bishop to d6 line with this, that is played for black. He's ready to castle and get a bishop out. White now can try to continue development with this, or kick back the knight. He can play e3. Black plays queen f6, threatening mate down here. With queen takes pawn at f2, white can then play knight to f3 to hold. And another idea is e4. Black can castle. Another idea is knight f3 and castle. All those are pretty well equal. But in this case, white wants to kick back that knight on h3 with this. So normally you would think that the knight can retreat to knight to e5. Whites can continue to develop with knight f3. Going to see a castle with black. White's going to play e4, and he's doing real well with control of the center and up a pawn. So another idea is queen to h4 rather than move the knight. After all, the pawn can't take here because you'll get something like that, taking the rook. So instead, here's the sacrifice of knight takes at f2. Well, the king takes the knight. Now the queen goes to queen to h4. Now what do? Well, the best that white can hope for is play g3 so that the queen's got to move and the queen is really going to checkmate. So that doesn't work. So if we go back again with the queen h4, you can try to run with the king to e3, perhaps a better attempt. Black's going to get knight to a6 so he can control the c5 later with check with this. White is going to knight to b5, perhaps trying to go there, take the bishop. You can try to get some space so that the king can move. Black will play queen to f4, attacking the king. King goes to d3. Black gets his knight to c5 with a check. King goes to c3. Black goes to e5, check again. White tries to put in a knight to d4. Black will play bishop takes that knight, check. If the queen takes, knight a4, the king's got to move again. King to d3, bishop f5, check again. And once you play e4, black takes that bishop a check and is ahead in piece and should win this game easy enough. So trying to move your king to f3 doesn't work very well. He's going to get mated real quick. Black plays queen to g3. No other move. He's got to play king to e4. Now there's several ways of winning with this. One would be just bring out the pawn on f5 on the king, let the king move. Bring out the other pawn on c5. King's got to go to d5. Black can then play queen to e5, check. Another line is just bring out the knight quickly, get another piece quick to follow it up. If white then plays knight f3, bishop comes out with f5 to check the king. King goes to d5. The knight that went from c6 goes to e7, check. King goes to d4. Pawn goes to c5, check. King goes to e3, only move. Bishop f4, checkmate. But the fastest way of winning after the king is there is simply bishop to f5. There's no other move. He's got to take the bishop. Queen to g6, checkmate. Nice trap in the Budapest Gambit.